Diane Whipple was born on January 31, 1967, on the east coast of the United States, and became known as a dedicated lacrosse player and later a respected college coach at St. Mary's College in California. On January 26, 2001, just 5 days before her 34th birthday, she was attacked inside the hallway of her Pacific Heights apartment building in San Francisco and died at 8:55 p.m. at San Francisco General Hospital from massive blood loss, caused by multiple dog bite injuries. That Friday afternoon, shortly after 4 p.m., Diane returned home carrying grocery bags, walking toward her apartment door as she had done countless times before, unaware that her neighbor Marjorie Knoller was in the hallway with two massive Presa Canario dogs, Bane and Hira, each weighing well over 100 pounds and already known in the building for their aggression. Witnesses later said the dogs had lunged at residents before, and Diane herself had been frightened weeks earlier when one of them snapped near her wrist. But this time there was no warning long enough to react. As Diane approached, the dogs suddenly surged forward, overpowering their handler within seconds. The narrow hallway turned into chaos as the animals knocked her to the ground. Neighbors reported hearing violent growling, heavy thuds against the walls, and Diane's desperate screams echoing through the building. A resident immediately called 911 while another ran upstairs toward the noise. By the time help reached her, Diane was lying on the hallway floor, gravely injured, groceries scattered around her. The scene described by first responders as one of the worst maulings they had ever witnessed. She suffered 77 distinct wounds covering nearly her entire body, with only the top of her head and the soles of her feet untouched. The dogs were eventually forced off her, but the damage had already been done. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital where doctors fought for hours to save her life, but the blood loss from the severe trauma was too extensive. She was pronounced dead later that evening. Investigators soon uncovered that the dogs had been obtained from a prison inmate connected to a violent extremist group, and that multiple warnings about their behavior had been ignored. Prosecutors argued that the owners knew the animals were dangerous yet continued keeping them in a crowded apartment building. In 2002, Knoller was convicted of second-degree murder, and her husband was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, marking one of the first times in California history that a dog owner faced a murder conviction after a fatal attack. Bane was euthanized shortly after the incident, and Hira was later put down as well. What happened to Diane Whipple was not a random moment of fate, but a chain of ignored warnings, dangerous decisions, and a hallway encounter that lasted only minutes yet ended a life forever. Deasy Tuwo was killed on January 10, 2019, inside a Pearl Farm laboratory in Minahasa, North Sulawesi, Indonesia. She was 44 years old, the head of the lab at CVOCiki, and that morning she walked toward an 8-foot concrete crocodile enclosure carrying a bucket of meat, just like she had done many times before. Inside the pool was a 4.4-meter, nearly 700-kilogram saltwater crocodile named Mary, an animal kept illegally at the facility. It was a normal feeding routine. The concrete edge around the enclosure was damp, slightly slick, and there were no safety rails, no harness, no second staff member standing next to her. She stepped close to the wall to throw the meat inside. In seconds, something went wrong. Investigators believe she either slipped on the wet surface and fell forward, or the crocodile surged upward, using its powerful tail to lift its massive body high enough to grab her. What is certain is that she went over that wall and into the water. Once inside, the attack was immediate. The crocodile clamped onto her arm with crushing force strong enough to sever bone almost instantly. Water exploded around them as it began the violent spinning motion known as the death roll, dragging her deeper into the pool. She was alone. No one heard sustained screams. No one saw the struggle. Within minutes, catastrophic blood loss and trauma ended her life. She did not return home that evening. The next morning, January 11th, around 8:45 a.m., coworkers approached the enclosure and noticed a strange shape floating in the water. As they looked closer, they saw the crocodile beside it. It was her body. One arm missing, most of her abdomen gone. Police and conservation officials were called. An intense 3-hour operation followed to sedate and remove the reptile from the pool. Authorities confirmed she died from severe injuries caused by the crocodile attack. Investigators later revealed the animal had been kept illegally by the farm's Japanese owner, who was not present at the time, and previous inspection attempts had failed because the facility gates were locked. Deasy Tuwo was described as quiet and dedicated to her work, responsible for feeding the animals daily. But on that Thursday morning, one routine task inside concrete walls turned into a fatal encounter with a predator that needed only seconds to kill. Michelle Hempstead died in the early hours of July 30, 2024. She was 34 years old, a mother of 5 from Southend-on-Sea, Essex, and she died at the Royal London Hospital after a single bite from her own dog severed a major artery in her upper arm. The night before, July 29th, just after 11 p.m., she was inside her flat on Retort Close with her partner and her 2 dogs, a small Pomeranian named Pom and a much larger Mastiff Rottweiler cross named Trig. She had brought home McDonald's food, including a box of chicken nuggets, and like she had done before, she began tossing the nuggets into the air for the dogs to catch. It was playful, loud, chaotic in a normal way. Pom would jump first, sometimes growling to get there ahead of the bigger dog. Trig, described later in court as a gentle giant, would snap his jaws in excitement, not aggression, just instinct and size and speed. In one brief second, both dogs lunged at the same nugget. Pom moved toward Trig. Trig reacted. His jaws came down, but instead of catching the smaller dog, they caught her. The bite landed high under her left arm, near the armpit. It wasn't multiple bites. It wasn't a prolonged attack. It was one powerful clap. But that single bite transected her left axillary artery, the main artery supplying blood to the arm. The damage was catastrophic. Blood began pouring out immediately. At first, the severity wasn't fully understood. Then the bleeding wouldn't stop. She ran out of the flat, calling for help, telling neighbors her dog had bitten her. Within minutes, she began to weaken. Severe blood loss leads to hypovolemic shock. The heart can no longer pump enough blood to sustain organs. Emergency services were called around 11:30 p.m. Paramedics arrived and rushed her to Southend Hospital. Doctors worked to stabilize her, but the blood loss had already triggered a chain reaction inside her body. She was transferred to the Royal London Hospital for specialist treatment. Despite surgical efforts and intensive care, multiple organ failure set in. In the early hours of July 30th, she was pronounced dead. The inquest later confirmed the cause: traumatic blood loss following a single dog bite that severed an artery. The coroner ruled it accidental, stating the bite was not malicious, but occurred during a brief fight between the 2 dogs over food. Police investigated and found no suspicious circumstances. Both dogs were seized from the property and later destroyed. What makes the case haunting is how ordinary the moment was: a late-night meal, playful feeding, familiar pets in a small flat. There was no history of violence. No warning signs that night. Just 1 second of cross movement between 2 animals and their owner standing too close. 1 snap. 1 artery. And within hours, a mother of 5 was gone. Christine Kulis died on December 4, 2025, inside her home on Murphy Crescent in Whyalla Stewart, South Australia. She was 39 years old. She had been with her partner Arlen Potter for nearly 10 years, and in the months before her death, her health had severely declined due to cirrhosis of the liver. She was weak, often unable to walk without help. But inside that house was a much bigger danger. A pit bull mastiff cross she and her partner had bred. A dog neighbors had complained about for years. Weeks before this day, that same dog had already attacked her, biting through the tendons in her arm so badly she was airlifted to Adelaide for treatment. Friends and her own mother begged her to put the dog down. She refused. Thursday afternoon, just after 4 p.m., she was inside the house. Her partner was there. No strangers. No break-in. Just them and the dog. What triggered it isn't fully clear, but witnesses say when the attack began, it was immediate and violent. This was not a warning snap. The dog launched at her with full force. Given her physical weakness, she had no strength to fight back, no ability to run, The animal clamped onto her, mauling her inside the home. Screams filled the house. Her partner tried to pull the dog off, but it wouldn't release. In desperation, he grabbed a meat cleaver and struck at the animal, trying to force its jaws open. Blood covered the floor. Blood covered him. The dog still resisted. Neighbors later said they had feared this moment for years. The dog had allegedly killed other pets, broken leashes, shown aggression repeatedly. Complaints had been made. Warnings had been given. But inside that house, in those minutes, none of that mattered. The attack was already happening. Emergency services were called around 4 p.m. Police and paramedics rushed to Murphy Crescent. When they arrived, she had suffered catastrophic injuries. Paramedics worked on her at the scene, attempting resuscitation. But the blood loss was severe. The trauma overwhelming. She could not be revived. She was pronounced dead shortly after. A close friend who arrived during the chaos saw her partner outside, covered in blood, saying only that the dog had attacked her. Police secured the property. The dog was seized by Whyalla Council and later euthanized. Authorities confirmed a report would be prepared for the coroner. What makes this case heavier than most is that this wasn't sudden, unpredictable violence. The warning signs were there. The same dog had already tried to rip her arm off weeks earlier. Her mother had pleaded with her to end it. Friends refused to visit because they were afraid. Neighbors said it was only a matter of time. And yet, on that Thursday afternoon, inside her own home, the animal she chose to keep became the one that killed her.